Do you feel it? Can you feel America getting healthier again? Like, as RFK Jr. is about to execute a quantum leap in American healthiness.
That's what my mission is, eliminate the politics from science.
So about a month ago, Trump was like, hey, Bobby, look into this childhood vaccine schedule thingy for me, would you? And Bobby, who I imagine was shirtless, working out, but still in jeans for some reason, was like, sure thing, Don. And since then, he's been at work in his office, neck deep in science, maybe, frantically scribbling indecipherable math equations on a chalkboard, or think montage style, with men finally emerging to announce that after an exhaustive review of the evidence, or what he calls evidence, the data just so happens to totally confirm what he already believed. So from now on, the total number of vaccines recommended for all children have been reduced from 17 to 11, which is also kind of weird because weren't kids previously getting like 80 shots?
You have a little child, little fragile child, and you get a vat of 80 different vaccines, I guess, 80 different blends, and they pump it in.
But anyway, of the 11 shots, it includes things like measles, rubella, polio, tetanus, HPV, chickenpox, among a few other things. Right, and the 6 shots getting kicked off the list are for influenza, RSV, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, rotavirus, and meningococcal disease. Right, and that even though RSV is the leading cause of hospitalization in American infants. And all of this, notably, it comes after RFK's handpicked vaccine advisory panel also sharply restricted its COVID vaccine recommendation for most Americans a few months ago.
COVID vaccines are inappropriate for 6-year-old children who basically have a zero risk from COVID.
Now, with all this, as you might imagine, the evidence that's been marshaled by RFK and his minions to justify this change, it's been described as questionable. But they claim that despite recommending significantly more shots than any other peer-developed nation, the United States has lower vaccination rates and childhood health outcomes. You had them citing Denmark in particular because it only immunizes kids against 10 diseases. Or you have public health experts refuting that, pointing out that apart from 1 or 2 exceptions, the US vaccine schedule was nearly identical to those of Canada, Britain, Australia, and Germany. And as for the ones that diverge from us, they're often responding to specific conditions unique to their countries. So for example, Japan excludes some vaccines that the US recommends, but it also includes others that the US doesn't, like a shot for Japanese encephalitis. And even in Denmark, they exclude some vaccines, not because they're unsafe, but because they're just too expensive, given that Denmark provides universal healthcare as a population 2% the size of ours and a totally different risk profile. But hey, that aside, RFK's health department is insisting that anyone who wants the 6 vaccines that it stopped recommending, they can still get those through the Affordable Care Act insurance plans and federal insurance programs, with a press release clearly stating families will not have to purchase them out of pocket. And at least as of right now, you have many major insurance companies saying, hey, we will keep covering the costs at least through the end of 2026. But also in the meantime, it's possible that GOP-led states follow the federal government's lead, and you have experts worrying that parents might take a cue not to vaccinate their kids. Or you've got the chair of the Infectious Disease Committee at the American Academy of Pediatrics saying, unfortunately, it's becoming increasingly clear that we can no longer trust the leadership of our federal government for credible information about vaccines, and that's a tragedy that will cause needless suffering. But also, that's not where it ends, because totally overhauling the decades-old vaccine schedule is not the only way that RFK is making America healthy again. And that is because reportedly, RFK's health department is planning to freeze $10 billion in funding for 5 Democratic states. We're talking New York, California, Illinois, Colorado, and of course, Minnesota, the site of the whole Somali Medicaid fraud scandal.
Every one of them should be forced to leave this country, including Ilhan Omar.
Right, in this move, after the White House froze $185 million for Minnesota daycare centers last week. $185 million obviously seems much smaller to a $10 billion cut. And as far as this cut, it includes $7 billion for the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program, which provides cash assistance to households with children. Also, nearly $2.4 billion is for the Childcare Development Fund, which supports childcare for working parents. And then around $870 million is for social service grants that mostly benefit children at risk. All of which could just leave hundreds of thousands of low-income households cut off from aid that they rely on to survive. Now, with that, if you ask the Trump administration, they claim that these cuts are necessary because Democrats in all 5 states have just allowed fraud to run rampant.
We're not going to pay them, and we're not going to pay California, and we're not going to pay Illinois with that big slob of a governor that they have.
But here's the thing, while people have been indicted for what appears to be genuine fraud in Minnesota, there's no evidence as of yet that the other 4 states have suffered anything similar. In fact, even for Minnesota, the alleged fraud allegations, they're not new, right? They were first investigated and charged by Biden's DOJ. And it's not even clear yet that the specific fraud that's been alleged in that viral video put out over Christmas by the right-wing YouTuber Nick Shirley actually happened. Or because despite all the dramatic clips of him aggressively confronting random Somalis.
Hello, we'd like to ask where the money's going. Answer the question, are there children? There's no children inside this building.
You have experts noting that he's presented little in the way of concrete evidence. When state investigators visited the daycare centers spotlighted in the video, reportedly they were all operating as expected. And so with all that, 1, I'd love to know your thoughts, opinions, and reactions to this news. 2, share to spread the word. And 3, there's also more news you need to know today. Nicolas Maduro pled not guilty to the 4 charges against him, and the whole prosecution looks like it's going to be a circus. Trump says that he's scared that there's going to be an impeachment if the GOP loses in the midterms. And the protests in Iran are continuing. There are dozens dead, and the regime is offering $7 a month to dampen economic hardships and slow down the protests. A move that's very unlikely to help and is almost insulting for many Iranians. Subscribe to stay in the loop and click here for more.